A Minnesota man was found dead in the Republic of Moldova, along with his passport and other identifying documents. His wife traveled to Moldova, confirmed his identity, and received a $2 million life insurance payout. Certainly a good sum for the family to have a somewhat happy ending, but 2 years later, their son found his father living abroad under an alias and enjoying his cut of the insurance proceeds. That might sound like a pitch for a Hollywood script, but it really happened. In October 2011, Igor Vorotinov faked his death and split the life insurance payout with his wife, Irina. After an anonymous tip and years of investigation, the FBI finally caught up with Vorotinov in 2018. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 41 months in prison. His wife and son had already pleaded guilty for their participation in the scam. They were sentenced to 37 months in prison and 2 years of probation. In the end, every scammer gets caught, like Jeffrey Stenrus. He was a former school police officer. He was removed from the force after pulling out something extraordinary. He was accused of staging his own shooting and was found guilty of the hoax that triggered a massive and costly manhunt. LA County Superior Court Judge Richard Kirshner convicted Stenrus, age 31, of several felonies and a misdemeanor charge in the non-jury trial, including planting false evidence, insurance fraud, and workers' compensation fund. The judge ordered that he should be sent to state prison for a 90-day psychological evaluation to assess whether he should be sentenced to prison or receive probation. After that, Stenrus was sentenced to 5 years in county jail, but Kirshner said he would have to serve only 2 years if he met the terms of his probation, which included completing 400 hours of community service. Not surprisingly, Tim Murphy, Stenrus' attorney, said that he was surprised and disappointed with the judge's ruling. While conceding that his client had made an incredibly stupid mistake by lying about the shooting, Murphy said the prosecution had failed to prove Stenrus had been acting intentionally and with intent to commit fraud. Even if his attorney might believe Stenrus had no criminal intent, but the January 19, 2011 hoax triggered a massive and costly hunt for a fictitious assailant, and it brought a swath of the valley to a standstill for hours. That just questions his intentions, but if he didn't want to deceive the insurance company, why did he say he was shot by somebody else? Stenrus was found by a passerby in apparent pain on the sidewalk near El Camino Real High School in Woodland Hills. Stenrus told authorities that he had been following up on a report of a car burglar in the area when a man with a ponytail and bomber-style jacket shot him in the chest and fled. And his bulletproof vest had apparently saved him from serious injury or death. Believing that there was a gunman in the area, more than 550 police officers combed the quiet neighborhoods near the school, conducting door-to-door searches and keeping an 8-square-mile area locked down for 10 hours. Police were suspicious of Stenrus' account almost from the start. Supporting his story was a spent shell casing found at the scene and bruising on Stenrus' chest. But what got authorities suspicious was his conflicting accounts of how the shooting had unfolded. Stenrus told them that only one shot had been fired, then changed his story to say that there had been several. In the days after the shooting, he dodged investigators who wanted to question him further. He said that he was sitting in his office at the school when he accidentally shot himself while cleaning his gun. After realizing he was not seriously injured, he went about his patrol duties and was overcome by a delayed pain from the impact of the bullet and fell to the sidewalk. You can surely tell that it was an unbelievable story. However, would you ever think that a person could move around after being shot? Surprisingly enough, this is exactly what happened to a man in New York City. On July 15th of 2019, a 30-year-old man was shot in the lower back while walking down Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. He continued walking for 2 blocks before finding help from paramedics at the scene. Despite being hit by a bullet, he was still able to walk and talk to first responders about his condition. After medical evaluation at the hospital, doctors determined he had suffered no organ damage or life-threatening injuries due to the shooting. This remarkable story highlights how resilient humans can be when facing unimaginable situations and dangers like gun violence. But here, the police officer did something else. Maybe he was not as resilient as the New York guy. During the trial, an LAPD detective testified that Stenrus admitted to faking the attack, confessing that he had accidentally shot himself while trying to clean his weapon, an explanation that remains doubtful. Prosecutors and police officials have alleged that Stenrus may have shot himself intentionally to gain attention. Calling Stenrus a disgrace, John Deasy, superintendent of the LA Unified School District, said in a statement that the conviction cleared the way for Stenrus to be fired. He has been on paid leave since the shooting. His actions were particularly appalling because he trivialized the real dangers Los Angeles police officers face every day, said LAPD Chief Charlie Beck, who pointed to a sharp increase in the number of attacks on city police in 2011. This is not just one case that shows human stupidity. A South Carolina lawyer who found the bodies of his wife and son 3 months ago tried to arrange his own death earlier this month so his son would get a $10 million life insurance payment. But the planned fatal shot only grazed his head. The shooter, Curtis Edward Smith, was charged with assisted suicide, insurance fraud, and several other counts in the September 4 shooting of Alex Murdaugh on a lonely highway in Hampton County. Murdaugh gave Smith the gun to kill him, and he followed Murdaugh to Old Sakahatchee Road, firing one shot at the lawyer as he stood in the road. But that bullet only grazed Murdaugh's head, and he was able to call 911 for help, authorities said. Murdaugh's lawyer said last week his skull was fractured by the bullet. Murdaugh wanted Smith to kill him so his surviving son would get his $10 million life insurance policy. Smith drove off after the shooting and disposed of the gun. It was not the only bad thing Murdaugh did. A few weeks before the incident, he pulled over after his Mercedes SUV's low tire pressure light came on. A man passing by in a pickup truck asked if he was having car trouble and then shot at him. He was charged with assisted suicide, assault and battery of a highly aggravated nature, pointing and presenting a firearm, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, distribution of methamphetamine, and possession of marijuana. Still unsolved are the June 7 killings of 52-year-old Maggie Murdaugh and her 22-year-old son Paul Murdaugh. Alex Murdaugh discovered the bodies of his wife and son at their Colleton County home. Both had been shot multiple times. But not all life insurance scams have as much drama. Some are as simple as an unscrupulous agent pocketing your premium payments or someone lying on their life insurance application. But it is an expensive problem. The total cost of insurance fraud, not including health insurance, is more than $40 billion per year, according to the FBI. That costs the average family in the U.S. between $400 and $700 per year in increased insurance premiums. It's not just the U.S. India is also a victim of life insurance scams. Amina Parvin was alone, sweeping the floor of her parents' home, when a man arrived on a January day in 2017 with a file in his hands. He introduced himself as a life insurance investigator and began pulling out papers: a payout claim, a passport photo, a death certificate, her death certificate. "Do you know Amina?" he asked. "I am Amina," she responded, "and I am, in fact, alive," with her brothers and uncles rushing over from their farms and shops to prove to the investigator that she was the victim of some kind of fraud. They eventually persuaded him to turn over the paperwork he'd brought, and that's how Parvin learned that a claim had been filed for an insurance policy on her life, one she never even knew existed, and the claimant was her estranged husband. Insurance fraud is certainly not limited to one country. In the U.S., scammers cost non-health insurers upwards of $40 billion a year. In the U.K., insurers uncovered 107,000 fraudulent claims worth almost $1.3 billion in 2019. But the way that India's life insurance is designed makes it an especially rich target. India offers its citizens a basic life insurance policy that's rare for any government to provide. It costs the equivalent of about $4 a year and pays out roughly $2,600 when a policyholder dies, easily enough to cover 2 years of wages for a typical worker. In 2000, the government opened the system to private insurers, who crowded in and began to cut corners. Lacking even the most basic of checks and balances, the industry lost an estimated $28 billion to scams in the 7 years through 2012. In India, scams come in many flavors, varying over time and by region. Just as the greater Delhi area became notorious for job scams and Jharkhand emerged as the hub for phishing calls, Assam took to life insurance fraud. And arguably, nowhere in Assam have investigators seen more of this type of fraud than in the district of Barpeta. There, few if any residents have birth certificates, and other basic documents have become easy to forge. Husbands told insurers that their living wives were dead. Wives said their long-dead husbands had recently died anew. Siblings made up extra siblings who could fake die as painlessly as they were fake born. And in many cases, the scams were perpetrated by people who had no relation to the allegedly dead at all. The Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India is weighing a proposal that would include insurance fraud cases on people's credit profiles, possibly affecting their access to loans and credit cards. Amina Parvin has moved on. After the insurance investigator found her alive, her husband's claim was denied. A committee of village elders ordered him to apologize and pay her $2,600. The couple divorced. She has since remarried. Village officials eventually learned that her husband had cashed in policies on more people, a lot more. He must have done at least 500 policies, said Hake, who was then president of the village council. Amina Parvin's husband, Sapur Ali, admits that he fraudulently filed for his now ex-wife's life insurance, but he maintains that the rest of the claims he filed were real. Those people, he says, genuinely died. Maybe we will never know unless their graves are dug up.